George Strait has always been more than just a country singer. To millions across the world, he is the king of country, the voice that carried them through childhood, heartbreak, celebration, and everything in between. For over 4 decades, his songs have been stitched into the very fabric of people's lives, representing not only country music, but a way of life. Yet today, news surrounding George has surfaced that has left fans shaken, tears filling their eyes, and emotions running deeper than ever. This time, the story is not about another sold-out stadium, another record broken, or a new album release. Instead, it is something more personal, more final, a reminder that even legends are not immune to the passage of time. George Strait's story is a rare one in the music industry. Born in Poteet, Texas in 1952 and raised on a ranch, George did not come from the glittering lights of Nashville or the carefully crafted star-making machines that defined so many of his contemporaries. He was a soldier before he was a singer, serving in the U.S. Army before his musical career ever took off. But the cowboy spirit ran deep within him, shaping everything that would come later. In the 1970s, George began performing with a band called Ace in the Hole, playing honky-tonks and small Texas dance halls. At the time, he had no idea that one day he would become the man who redefined country music for generations. Everything changed in 1981 when he released his debut single, Unwound. Practically overnight, the country music industry realized that George Strait was different. At a time when trends were pushing artists toward pop crossover sounds and polished radio hits, George stood firm in tradition. His songs featured steel guitars, fiddles, and the kind of honest baritone voice that carried sincerity in every note. Fans connected instantly. It was pure, it was real, and it was timeless. The 1980s and 1990s saw George Strait become unstoppable, releasing hit after hit. Songs like Amarillo by Morning, All My Exes Live in Texas, and Ocean Front Property didn't just climb the charts, they became cultural touchstones. What made George different from many of his peers was that he never relied on gimmicks or flashy personas. He didn't need outlandish costumes, elaborate music videos, or over-the-top stage antics. Dressed in his cowboy hat, jeans, and boots, he let the music speak for itself. That quiet confidence became his trademark. And then there were the records he broke. 60 #1 singles, more than any other artist in any genre. The numbers alone left critics stunned and fans in awe. George Strait wasn't just successful, he was dominant. To see George Strait live was to witness something extraordinary. He didn't leap across the stage or whip the crowd into a frenzy with theatrics. Instead, he stood calmly, guitar in hand, and allowed the power of his voice to do all the work. And yet, stadiums filled to capacity wherever he went. His presence was enough. He didn't just define country music, he embodied it. Everything about him was authentic, rooted in tradition, and his dominance reshaped the very standards of the industry. Every artist who followed would be measured against his legacy. But what makes today's news so heartbreaking for fans is the realization that the cowboy who stood as a symbol of strength and permanence is not immune to time. By the early 2000s, George had already built a career that few in history could rival. He had cemented his reputation as the king of country. And yet, in 2012, he made an announcement that shook the music world. He would no longer be touring full-time. For decades, fans had relied on George's steady presence. New albums, endless tours, and the comforting certainty that the king of country was always just around the corner. His decision to step back felt like the closing of an era. The farewell tour that followed, appropriately named The Cowboy Rides Away, became more than just a series of concerts. It was a cultural moment. Each stop carried the weight of finality. Fans traveled from across states and even countries to catch one last glimpse of the legend before he disappeared from the road. The concerts were emotional gatherings where tears flowed freely, and fans held signs that read, "Don't go George," or "Thank you, King George." For George himself, normally a stoic figure, the emotion sometimes broke through in his voice. When he sang "The Cowboy Rides Away," it was no longer just a hit single. It was a hymn of farewell. The tour lasted 2 years and ended in 2014 with an unforgettable show at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas, where more than 104,000 fans filled the seats, marking the largest indoor concert in North American history. That night was more than a concert. It was history, a coronation, and a goodbye rolled into one. Country icons like Alan Jackson, Vince Gill, and Miranda Lambert joined him on stage, but no one could overshadow the man at the center. When George sang his final notes, fans knew they had witnessed the end of an era. Behind the calm, steady image George projected to the world was a man who had endured pain and tragedy far beyond what many realized. In 1986, at just 34 years old, and at the height of his rising career, George's life was shattered when his 13-year-old daughter, Jennifer, was killed in a car accident. For George and his wife, Norma, it was a devastating blow. He rarely spoke about the loss in public, choosing to grieve privately. Yet those who listened closely to his music could hear the pain in his voice. Songs like Baby Blue carried a rawness that fans instinctively linked to his grief, even though he never confirmed it. His decision to keep his mourning private only deepened the respect fans felt for him. Unlike others who turned personal tragedy into publicity, George carried his pain quietly, honoring his daughter without spectacle. In her memory, he and Norma later established the Jennifer Lynn Strait Foundation, which continues to donate to children's charities across Texas. It was his way of transforming heartbreak into hope. That silent strength became part of his legend, reminding fans that the king of country was not untouchable, but a man who had endured unimaginable loss. As George entered his 70s, every public appearance began to feel more precious. Fans scrutinized videos of his performances, worried if his voice sounded softer or if he seemed tired. Postponed shows or canceled appearances only added to the speculation. Though no serious health issues have been confirmed, the silence surrounding his personal life has only fueled concern. At 73, George is at the age where many of his peers have already stepped away or passed on. The thought of losing him, even gradually, weighs heavily on his fans. Through it all, George Strait has remained grounded in what he values most: family. He married his high school sweetheart, Norma, in 1971, and their